I didn't go to med school to get lectured by a barefoot painter with emotional issues. Well, I didn't survive a goddamn overdose just to be judged by a walking ego in a lab coat. The door between them slammed. Again. Dr. Colin Reeves was used to being in control. Control was how he survived his father's temper, med school panic attacks, and the ER at St. Jude's. But he couldn't control Elias Monroe the barefoot, paint-splattered neighbor whose music seeped through the thin apartment walls at 2 a.m., whose cat kept peeing on Colin's doormat, and whose infuriatingly soulful eyes made Colin forget why he was mad in the first place. Elias was chaos, wrapped in sarcasm and thrift store denim. He painted huge canvases on his patio like he didn't care who was watching, like the world didn't scare him. Colin both hated and envied that. Every interaction with him was a sparring match. And yet, every night, Colin found himself listening for the creak of Elias's door. Every morning, hoping to accidentally run into him by the mailbox. It didn't help that Elias was stupidly attractive in that insufferably careless way. Their fights were legendary in the building. But only Colin knew how often those arguments ended with his heart racing and his thoughts spiraling. One rainy Thursday, the power went out. Colin was halfway through reheating sad leftovers when Elias knocked, holding 2 candles and a bottle of cheap wine. "I know we hate each other," Elias said, dripping wet. "But I figured dying alone in the dark was worse." Against all logic, Colin let him in. They sat cross-legged on Colin's kitchen floor, surrounded by flickering candlelight. The wine turned to laughter. Laughter turned to stories. And then, "You really don't like being touched, huh?" Elias had asked gently, after their fingers accidentally brushed. Colin stiffened.
"No.
I mean, complicated." Elias didn't push. He just nodded, eyes soft. And for the first time, Colin felt seen. The next morning, they were back to arguing. But something had shifted. There was a crack in Colin's walls, and Elias had slipped through it. Days passed. Colin came home to find fresh flowers left anonymously on his doorstep. A week later, Elias knocked again, holding his cat and asking for help. "She's not eating. I think something's wrong." Colin's hands, trained and steady, trembled slightly as he examined the small creature. "She's okay," he murmured. "Just a stomach bug." Elias looked at him like he was a goddamn hero, and Colin didn't know what to do with that. They started seeing each other more. Not on purpose. Or at least that's what Colin told himself. Elias would be sketching in the courtyard. Colin would happen to be jogging by. Elias's music would accidentally play Colin's favorite 80s tracks. Colin would leave notes taped to Elias's door about noise complaints. But they were signed with smiley faces now. Then came the night Elias didn't answer his door. Not the next morning either. By the third day, panic bloomed in Colin's chest like a wildfire. He banged on Elias's door, then kicked it open. Elias was curled on the floor, pale, shaking. A bottle of pills tipped over beside him. Colin's hands moved before his brain did. 911. CPR. Tears. Blood pressure. Screaming. Begging. The ER. The smell of antiseptic and regret. Hours later, Elias blinked awake. "Colin. You stupid, beautiful idiot," Colin whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Don't you ever scare me like that again." Elias's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to. I was tired of pretending I was okay." And Colin understood, because he too was tired of pretending that hating Elias was easier than loving him. The doctors said Elias would recover. Colin didn't leave his side for 3 days. When Elias finally came home, Colin was waiting at the door, this time with soup and a trembling hand that dared to reach out. "You don't have to pretend anymore," Colin said. "Not with me." Elias didn't speak, just leaned in. Their foreheads touched, breath mingled, and in the quiet, something unspoken finally broke free. That night, for the first time, Colin let himself fall asleep beside someone. No panic, no armor, just warmth. They weren't perfect after that. They fought over art supplies in the hallway. Elias painted on Colin's lab coat once by accident. Colin alphabetized Elias's vinyl collection and nearly got murdered for it. But every night, they found each other again. In the quiet, in the warmth, in the stubborn, glorious mess they built together. Colin learned how to listen not just to patients' heartbeats, but to the quiet aching of someone who'd once stopped breathing. And in Elias's chaotic laugh, he finally heard music again. They were fire and ice, medicine and madness, logic and color. But they were real, and that was enough, because love doesn't always start with butterflies. Sometimes, it starts with yelling across the hall and ends with whispered "I'm sorry's" in candlelight. And sometimes, when you stop fighting the world, you start hearing your own heart beat louder than ever. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.